Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good day so far today. Last night at my church's midweek service, we were in the book of 2 Kings. We were in chapter number 6. And as Pastor was preaching, there was an encounter with the servant of Elisha, which I wanted to share a little bit on this morning. Here's a little backstory first, though. The king of Syria is warring with the king of Israel and is basically trying to set up a trap to be able to take over the king of Israel. And the king of Israel is not going to wherever any of these places are. He is not doing this because Elisha, the man of God, the prophet of God, is telling him where and when these places are, so he knows to stay away. This is such a strange thing for the king of Syria, where he knows that the king of Israel is getting some information and begins to accuse his own servants of telling the king of Israel. So now we got that backstory set up. I'm going to read verses 12 through 15 in 2 Kings chapter 6. And one of his servants said, "None, my lord, O king," referring to the king saying, "Who of you are telling the king of Israel this?" "None, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet that is in Israel, telleth the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber." And he said, "Go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him." And it was told him, saying, "Behold, he is in Dothan." Therefore sent he thither horses and chariots and a great host. And they came by night and compassed the city about. And when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, a host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. And his servant said unto him, "Alas, my master, how shall we do?" So the king of Syria here learns that Elisha is somehow knowing this confidential information. We know it's because Elisha is a prophet and is communicating directly with God and is telling the king of Israel, "Don't go here." The king of Israel, who is abiding in God's commands, and he is not going there because he knows danger is there. So, the king of Syria concocts a plot to capture the man of God. Now tomorrow I will make a video of a very similar situation where an evil king, a king contrary to God, concocts a plan to try to overtake the man of God and comes up short. Because even though they may be outnumbered in terms of men right there, there's one thing these armies never take into consideration. That is, they have the God and creator of the universe on their side. So many times man thinks he has this foolproof plan to overtake the outnumbered, the man of God, or the woman of God in some situations. Happens even today. There were times where even Satan thinks, "I finally have him," but always comes up short every single time. And the king of Syria knows he needs to make sure he catches him. So he sends an entire army. He's basically treating Elisha as a whole army, which is certainly good on his part, knowing that just a few people won't work. And Elisha's servant sees this in the morning and goes to Elisha and says in verse 15, "Alas, my master, how shall we do?" The servant knew that the two of them could not take on the Syrian army by themselves. And he was right in that regard. And he knew under their own strength they could not flee, since the city was surrounded by an army. You can't just sneak through an army like that. But there's one thing the servant was overlooking in his panic. And we hear what was likely a calm Elisha give what to us might seem like a very peculiar answer. And he answered, this is verse 16, "Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. No doubt the servant was a little confused at the hearing of this from Elisha. We do not see in Scripture a response from the servant. I don't know if there was one or not, but Elisha continues in verse number 17, expounding on the reality of the situation that they were in. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. There is a spiritual war going around us that we cannot comprehend. We cannot see it with our own eyes, but it is happening. We must continue going on the path and doing the things which the Lord has set out in front of us to further his kingdom. And as we do this, Satan and his demons will fight against us. But in the end, God will protect us and his will be done. If God is the only one on our side, that is more than enough. That is all we need as we go throughout our days. We have already won the battle. This particular battle here in 2 Kings chapter 6 ends with the Syrian army being blinded. And Elisha leads the blinded army into Samaria. And after this, the king of Israel, who happened to be in Samaria at that time, after saying, do I smite them? Asking Elisha if he should smite them. And Elisha says, no, what you shall do is feed them and send them back home to their master. He acted in mercy and fed them and let them go home. And after this act of mercy, Syria no longer came into the land of Israel. Israel no longer had a problem with the Syrian army. After this act of mercy, letting them go, and he surely could have destroyed them right there and ended the war. But he was merciful and let them go home. I hope that all of you got something out of this, that all we need on our side is God. And we just need to trust in him as we go throughout our days. God bless all of you, and I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday today. And I hope everyone listening to this video is able to make it to church on Sunday. God bless.